Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Mr. Flick, and this is the first episode in a new series I'm doing where I interview techno producers and DJs within the scene. These are going to be people that I'm releasing music with, that I have collaborations with, or maybe various suggestions from the community. So with that, my first guest is Mike Malokia, aka SKiRRA. He's a hard techno producer. His sound is driving, dark, but it's always super functional in DJ sets. I often include his tracks in my mix series. He's got a 2-track single out on Filth Infatuated called Battle of the Beak. He's also got 2 tracks out on Hydraulix, which is D.A.V.E. the drummer's label, and those are entitled Invasion and Stone Cold. And with that, I'd like to welcome Mike, aka SKiRRA, to the show. What's up, man? How's it going?
Yo, bro. Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good.
Nice to finally see your face.
I know. We've only
it's nice to put faces to names, man.
I know. It's all just email and social media. So
that's right, man. Yeah.
So it's also kind of why I want to do this too, just as a way to network and just to get to know people that are working in the scene, and a lot of people who don't really get, I don't know, there's just a lot of people working that don't necessarily get a shine put on them or just, their story told. So
you're absolutely right, mate. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that's something that a lot of people, I don't think they understand the power of networking and the power of actually building relationships in this industry, because this is underground music. We're not, none of us are millionaires from making techno music. And so when I'm going straight into this, but it's been on my mind, and it's a natural progression into something that I think about a lot. When you've got kind of new guys that come into the scene. I mean, I was one of those guys, when I first came to the scene and got signed to a record label. My initial reaction was, I'm going to buy my wife a new car. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you're 6, 7, 8 years down the line, and you've got probably about 30 quid to show for it.
Yeah.
In royalties, then you realize that actually it isn't all that you thought it was. But the riches come in other forms, and for me, the riches come in networking with people who genuinely want to help each other out. Because it's techno music for me has been a lifesaver in many ways. But I mean, helping others and having others kind of help you in return, really it has its own currency value, And so when you're in a position where you can help people out, I genuinely think that it's something that everybody should do. Not everybody does, but everyone should understand that this is the underground, and this is how we remain relevant by being a community.
That's such a good way to put it, and that's also something that I've been coming to more of a realization of as well, and just wanted, I as producers too, we can be pretty isolated. I'm generally pretty introverted and things like that, and I've kind of hid behind that a lot. So that is exactly what you're saying. Is I've been feeling the same way. It's not so much about what someone can do for you. It's what you can do to help other people in any way that you can, especially in this small community of, underground techno producers, that world. So I really
totally. I think it's more what you can do to help the scene as well. Cause I mean, we're anybody that knows me, personally is gonna roll their eyes if they're watching this and they see me say this yet again. This is something I kind of use as an analogy a lot, and it helps me in terms of breaking down what's important to me being a techno artist. And the way I see it is that underground music in general, not just techno, is like a machine, and we're all kind of cogs in this machine. So you've got producers that are the bigger cogs that serve the smaller cogs, which are the DJs that use to produce this material. Or if you're a DJ producer, obviously, it all kind of filters through. And if any one of those cogs jumps out of the machine or gets broken or forgets to oil itself or oil the other ones around it, then you got a problem because the machine breaks down. And if the machine breaks down, you need to fix it. And I've seen it happen. I mean, I've been doing this. I mean, I started in the late 90s. And so I've seen scenes come and go, sort of mid 90s with the happy hardcore scene in the UK. and then through to kind of hard trance in the late 90s in London, and then moving forward towards kind of the more modern stuff like the hard house and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of those scenes, I mean, even though they still have pockets, essentially those scenes died out because the people that were running them, or the producers, the promoters, the DJs, at some point they forgot to look after everybody around them, and the machine broke down. And so in terms of kind of, so what I try to do, and what I, pretty much everybody I know in the scene tries to do, is put the scene first and realize that the machine has to keep running in order for us to maintain the value of it. And so I personally, that's the kind of the first thing that's what I hold at the kind of top of the pyramid, and then everything else kind of filters down, whether it be self-serving or whatever. That comes later on.
I like that.
But by looking out for the machine, you're essentially, you are serving yourself in the long run. So
I like that. And how's the scene in the UK? What part of the UK are you currently in?
So I'm from London, but I moved to the Midlands about 8 years ago. So I live just north of Birmingham.
Okay.
And so, the scene is great. I mean, it's a funny one because I used to do the kind of, it's a beatport coining, but I guess everybody knows it as peak time techno. I used to kind of,
you produced
kind of melodic
Masinki
stuff with Masinki. So that was kind of like the sort of thing I did before lockdown. And it was tough. I mean, there wasn't many opportunities in the UK in terms of,
for that sound, you're saying?
Playing music. Yeah. It was more of a European kind of based thing. I mean, you had kind of like Vitali, Spartak and people like that kind of just rocking Europe and kind of making it work really well in Europe. And we didn't really have anyone of that kind of sound like in the UK kind of propping it up.
Yeah, because you were getting some decent signings with that under that.
Yeah. No, I've been really blessed, man. I mean, Masinki was great. I mean, it really, again, comes back to networking. For me, some of the best friends that I've ever had in my life have come from that scene. Tony Romanello is one of them. Greg Nothill, people that you may or may not have heard of, but are absolutely smashing it now. But we were all just trying to make it work as a community back then. And but for me, I enjoyed that sound, and I still enjoy that sound, melodies and stuff like that. And it's kind of comes back to my kind of hard trance roots back in the sort of late 90s. And so I enjoy that vibe, but there's something inside me that demands darkness, like not in a demonic way, but in I just love to fucking have it. And I mean, I mean, back sort of 98, I got heavily into acid techno, and that was the kind of thing that everybody kind of listened to in London, South London. And there were kind of like 4 or 5 main clubs in just in the Brixton area alone where you would go on a Saturday night. And there was a handful of people that were just pushing that scene really hard, and it was the influences kind of were there. And then
like Dave the drummer, him from that era too.
Yeah, he was definitely one of. I mean, so Henry Cullen, Dave the drummer, is so the thing with the UK is, because I mean we it's a small scene, but the scene is very potent when it's kind of going. And Dave the drummer and a handful of other engineers, if you went into a record shop in the late 90s and you set up a little, you go in. I mean, it was great. You don't get these anymore, but you'd go. There was a couple of record stores we'd go to on a Saturday morning, and you go into these places, and they'd have like a turntable set up for you, and the guy behind the counter would give you, a selection of tracks, and you put them in your little pigeonhole, and then you'd go through them. And every week you'd have a new Root Master, or you'd have a new Smitten, or you'd have a new, Pro Cult, or whatever was, at the time. And I'd probably safely say that 80% of the tracks that were given to you were produced by Henry Cullen. It's just mad. And I spoke to him the other day when we were playing in Birmingham, and I said to him about DATs and stuff, and he's like, fucking hell, mate, I have no idea where any of this stuff is anymore, because he's got rooms full of DATs.
Yeah.
And it's just it's mad to think that, a handful of people have produced such an amount of music, and for it to be so influential. Influential,
which is so much different than now, because just everything is at everyone's fingertips. So it's just
it's easily accessible, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I actually don't mind that. I like the fact that there are lots of people kind of because one thing that will always happen is that you can have lots and lots of people putting their hand to things that they may or may not be into, or just trying for the first time or whatever. But you're only really going to get, with hard work and dedication, you're only really going to get a handful of people. A handful of people, but you're going to get a percentage of those people who actually have something there that they can then take on. But I believe that quality will always be quality. Yeah. So you can have 1 million producers, but you're only going to have a handful of people that you will end up networking and gravitating to anyway, because of the sound that they produce, or you what you're listening for, that what they've laid on their kick, when you're listening to it, how they're producing even before you've even had a chat with them. So it's there's a separation there naturally anyway.
Yeah. But then even that, so say someone is really talented, but if they're not even putting themselves out there, if they're not sending their tunes, say they're even at a certain level, this kind of goes back to what you were saying about the networking thing. If they're, they're just sitting on a hard drive full of tracks, and they never even try to put them out, never send them to anybody, you know what I mean? Then they're just, I think that happens to a lot of people,
Yeah. I mean, we all do it, don't we? We all start projects and then abandon them and just kind of then come back to them. I mean, it's funny because I do it, but I do it with actual finished music. So I just recently, actually, you mentioned Ballad of the Beak and the B-side. I can't remember what I called it now. Without Reason,
Without Reason, that's a good. Both tracks are great. Yeah.
So with those two, they were two that actually I'd written, and then I send them off to my mastering engineer AP, and he does what he does with them and sends them back, and I put them in a folder, which is kind of like for kind of later on. So what I do is I then completely forget about them. I've forgotten I've done them, and then a year later, I'm looking through, like, I think. What was it? Oh, it was actually AP that wanted. He's like, have you done any kind of like any sort of packs, any sound packs, sample packs so that we can do a collab? So I'm like, yeah, do you know what? I'll have a look. I'll go through. So I went through and I found this thing, and I'm like, oh, you never guess what I found? I found like 15 tracks that are already sort of finished. And so I'm like, do you know what? I'll put them out. So I just reached out to a couple of people that I tend to kind of go to first. And Mark Neenan is a really good mate of mine. I was playing a gig with him, and I said, "Oh, I've got some music. Do you want to hear it?" He's like, "Yes." Yeah. So I sent him the thing, and he's like, well, "Mate, this is amazing. Where did you get these from?" And I'm like, "Well, I've had them just sat on my computer." So yeah, he just said, "Well, I'll have those two," and then he's got another one for a VA. Sorry, Mark.
Nice.
I don't know.
That's great.
I was about to say that, but.
I always pride myself on actually finishing tunes, even if I don't do anything with them. Like, even if I'm like, this is all right, I'll at least get it to a point where it's like done and then try to put it aside. But I'm not sending it out to get it mastered. That's because, I feel like once you do that, it's done. You're not touching it again. It just kind of seals it up. Yeah. And if I do the master myself, there's like, I'm likely going to go back and tweak it, Yeah.
So spot on. That's exactly why I don't do the mastering myself. Because what happens with that then is that you then have the mastering project, and you can then go back because let's face it, techno is subjective, right? And I have anything is subjective. Anything creative is subjective. So I have a way that I like to work, and I have a way that I like to do things, and there's a sound that just naturally emanates from me. As with you, there's a sound that you can, like, if I hear a Mr. Flick track, you'll know it's a Mr. Flick track, right?
Hope so.
That kind of that helps to eliminate that kind of so what that is, I think that's your subjective, that's your subconscious just taking over and just doing what you naturally do and just getting the job done, right? And that comes with time, that comes with hours and hours of putting the work in. Yeah, like Bruce Lee said, you got to do 10,000 kicks to be a master of kicking. Yeah, and it's the same thing. You got to lay down 10,000 kicks to know what your kick drum's going to sound like. And I've, a lot of people say, "How do you get the kick drum to sound the way it does?" And I genuinely, I can tell them the process, but I don't know. It just happens.
Yeah. And they'll try to do the same thing, and it'll just come out slightly. It won't come out the same.
It will always come out
subtle
different.
Combination of just
mine comes out how it comes out. Yeah, it's But what were we talking about anyway? Because I just went right off.
I don't even know.
Anyway,
where were we at? Well, you were talking about. I asked you about the UK scene. You were talking about Dave the drummer, and then we went on a tangent about.
Yeah, it's mad. It's good. It's good. So
and we were just networking, and then So. Well, but that's the point. We're just supposed to. This is just. It's good. It's just
chilling.
As it goes. So
Masinki was great, but it wasn't really going anywhere because peak time melodic techno, whatever you want to call it, isn't really that big here. It's listened to, but it's not really raved to very much. Yeah. It is, but you have to be the right people. Alan Fitzpatrick, blah blah blah, all those kinds of people. Yes. They're the people that kind of will get the dance floor full, and so it's certain. But there are a lot of people that just want to have it. They just want to have underground. They just love underground music, and that's kind of seen, and that's filtered through from the 90s onwards.
Yeah, there's a lot of roots from the UK with hardcore, and then going into jungle and just all Absolutely. That. It's been there. Yeah, and then it also it's very regional. So depending on where you are is depending on what you're going to get. So Bristol is obviously well renowned for drum and bass, and then you've got obviously London being very multicultural. So there's a lot of other things going on there, not just sort of 4/4 music. There's lots of stuff going on. Oh yeah. And then Birmingham has a small techno scene, but it's not huge. And there is a handful of kind of nights that are kind of doing that, what you would call kind of melodic stuff, but it's mainly raw and hard. These guys here, Collide, they're my brethren. So they signed me as a resident last year before last, something like great. That. And we've had some amazing shows, absolutely brilliant, and we've been all over. And they're we started off in Birmingham, but they're now branching out they've gone to Glasgow. We went to Glasgow not that long ago. Went to Wales. We're kind of branching down towards London, starting to talk to the London promoters, stuff like that. So there's a lot of scope. But it really is, the harder sound is really bigger than anything here. And so, I think in general, there's kind of been a trend moving toward in that direction overall, and within the scene, which I'm sure you're happy about with this project that you're doing. Is there anything you worry about with it trending that way? I don't worry. I wouldn't say worry. Worry's not really a word I'd use, because at the end of the day, like I said, it's subjective. I have my sound, and I will refuse to be pulled into trends for the sake of being pulled into trends, unless it's something I really dig. And I'm not into melodic hard techno. I'm not into using synth lines and stuff like that. My roots kind of bass are kind of firmly rooted in 16th percussion elements and stuff like that. So lots of 16th work, lots of very aggressive drum patterns and stuff like that. I'm going to kind of
I'm going to link that slightly into the way I feel about sort of techno in general, or any kind of dance music in general, except for kind of EDM and stuff like that. For me, it's club music, right? So we don't make it so that people can have it on their Walkmans walking down the street. I'm just showing my age, Walkman. But what we do is we make it with the sole intention of creating the best environment on a dance floor. So when it comes out of that system, the subs are going, everything's been kind of leveled off. You've got an engineer who's just complete, who is capable enough to be able to produce the best quality output for your music. That's what techno's for. Yeah. For me, it's not really for, I don't sit here working or chilling listening to techno. I just don't really do it. I mean, I'll listen to kind of like binaural stuff, and just stuff that's chill and I can focus with.
Yeah.
I never really listen to hard techno as in to listen to it. But when I go out to support friends, or if I go and if I'm being booked
or prepping a set or something,
this is when it comes alive, because it's a monster. It's a beast. It's not supposed to be coming out of of somebody's headphones walking down the street. It's supposed to be hitting you square on in your fucking chops.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's kind of really important. That's a really important kind of aspect about techno, is that it really is. It's a something that you have to share as a producer. You make it to share it in the right environment. And so I can't even remember why I said that, why we're talking about that.
No, that's good. No, we're just rambling on.
That.
So where do you hope to see it develop, I guess? Where would you like to see
just reminding me. I'd like to see I'm going to be careful how I say this, because it doesn't matter. As soon as you start getting controversial, you get all sorts of people opening their mouth. But I'd like to see it less handled in a less commercial way by a certain sales platform.
Yeah.
And have them have that particular sales platform have less power when it comes to music and the power of music and how that touches people's hearts, because that said platform is basically has been pulling the strings for a very long time, and
So I'd assume you're talking about Beatport.
He said it. No, yeah.
But yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that too. About how relevant do you think it's still? How relevant do you think it still is in terms of DJ bookings and
Beatport? Zero.
Yeah. So and then how gamed is it at this point? I mean, I know
it's on borrowed time. I believe it's on borrowed time, I think. But again, what do I know, man? I'm not in that. I don't. But it's one of those. It's a necessary evil right now, because we're in a position where, they're taking kind of 80% of the market or whatever it is. I don't know. I haven't got it in front of me, but it's quite high.
Yeah.
And as a result, you kind of have to play their tune. And if you don't play their tune, things happen, such as people getting cancelled. Like when hard techno got eradicated and moved into the, and everyone kicked off. And
now recently they've brought it back. I mean, obviously we all know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was that period where it was just hard to find. I mean, you would just have to dig through so much to find. Yeah, it was just all lumped in with peak.
It's just basically. Because the curators there don't understand the nuances, and I think this is the issue. This is what I'm saying. It's like music is there to touch people's hearts, and hard techno does not touch the heart of somebody who's into, I don't know, pick a melodic techno producer.
Yeah.
So it's that's you know, you can't. It's not just because it's got the word techno in it doesn't mean it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the same. And you know, anyone worth their salt, anyone who knows, anyone who comes from that underground scene knows that that's not the case.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the future,
the sound, even like where would you like to see the sound develop? Where do you see it going? Is it more about pulling from the past roots, or would you like to see
I
it
would
more
personally, I mean, you know,
future?
and this is just, I would like to see, because again, it's subjective. So, you know, just because I don't like melodic hard techno doesn't mean it's not, you know, it's not a relevant sound.
Yeah.
That sound is, but for me, I'm coming from a, you know, a 20-year-old kid from, you know, in 1998, that sound, I was listening to that in 98 and it was called hard trance. Yeah. It's the same thing, right? But they've called it hard techno and it's not. And so it's just a case of labeling stuff properly, because labels have power. And if you know, the sound is not, it's not relevant in terms of that underground hard techno vibe. You know, and you can go to any of the older guys like, you know, Henry or Guy McCaffer, you know, anyone that has come from that kind of that era where techno is a percussive beast. Yeah. They'll tell you the same thing, and it's just, you have to just, and this is why I put in labels like peak time, progressive, industrial, house, techno. It's bad news, and it just, all you're doing is you're watering down the vibe.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's all in a way to help people find what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's really all it is. Yeah, it's a sales thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's just, I would just love to see a little bit more of the grip released and have the kind of music kind of speak for itself. But how that happens, I don't know. But you know, social media is another huge thing, isn't it? I mean, I'm not, that
was something I was going to move into too.
You only have to look at my social media to know that I don't dig it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like every musical artist you talk to, any genre, it just seems like it's very few that actually like it. You know, I mean, it's kind of become one of those things that you're going to get into this. It's just part of the job that you have to do, you know?
I mean, you'll like it. You'll like it if it's making you, if it's getting you bookings, or if you're, you know, if you've got enough followers, genuine followers that will give you, that will, you know, will then give you kickback in your pocket.
Yeah. But support you at shows and whatnot.
Yeah. But the majority of people that, you know, that are on social media, they spend far too much time on there for a start.
Yeah.
And not enough time in the studio, just like making bangers. You know, there are plenty of people out there that are models. Let them be models, you know. And unfortunately, we got to this point where it's just your face and what you wear and how you act on social media has more of an impact on the scene than the actual music.
Yeah.
You know, and us ugly gits in the background, we just kind of, who don't really do social media but just like making bangers. There are different levels, and the higher your social media following is, the more opportunities happen as professionals. And I would love to see that change. I would love to see kind of people, because there are some artists out there right now that, you know, you've probably never heard of them, but they're absolutely slaying it right now. And
I have a, you know, I would dream of just creating a profile that doesn't exist online anywhere besides through releases. I mean, it's not really realistic, but
no, it's not.
I feel like that's more realistic. If you had a name and you had connections, you could do something like that, where you could still filter your tracks to people and just keep this anonymous online. I actually think in the future that'll be a trend. Like, underground scenes will almost cut themselves off from the internet. I don't think we're there yet. Probably another couple generations. I see that as a trend that would arise. Are you on TikTok at all? Have you been on that platform? What are your feelings about TikTok?
Not much really. I mean, obviously, it's a good place to get noticed as an artist. I mean, I know that I've had my Masinki stuff especially has done pretty well on TikTok. SKiRRA not so much, but that's mainly because of the style of music, and I think because of the way they use the music is a bit more, dynamic and hands-on, and kind of demands a little bit more kind of melody and stuff. But
So
obviously, you've got artists on there that have done, massively well, people using their tracks for dances and all sorts of stuff. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not the best person to talk to when it comes to social media at all. When it, in singing its praises, because I just think it's just vacuous and just, and just soulless and empty. And, when you've got, I saw a video the other day, which was quite interesting, as a chap saying, talking about TikTok, saying, that he thinks that it's some sort of Chinese way to kind of basically disrupt the West, because he's in China. They use TikTok in a very different way to the way they use it in the West. And in China, you're rewarded for being ingenuitous and being
they show a bit about engineers and
and just the more stuff that you can kind of give back to the world, the more they reward you. But in the West, you're just rewarded for being a fuckwit, and it's just and just for doing fuckwit shit.
Well, so I also the one way I look at that though is it's kind of the difference between a planned society versus a free society. I mean, you're always going to have somewhat of that, and if someone's motivated and is after a certain type of information, they can also find that. So I get what that. I've seen that.
I
point
get it
as well.
Saw that one,
But that's very interesting. I mean, you definitely. I think about it sometimes. I'm on there. As a, it's one thing I will say is it's changing the landscape. I mean, like the way that you were describing, say, Instagram, it's not so much about flashy models and curated posts. It's more stripped down in that sense. So it's changing what will work for artists. So I do think it's something that everybody should kind of keep their eye on.
I mean, that comment was a comment that I
I agree.
Ironically, from a video that I'd watched on social media. So, but the bottom line is that I think if you can use it as a tool, and you can use it, in the right way, and you get an audience, like, for instance, you want to give tips and tricks on kind of how to make music, or how to, mix, or whatever, something that's going to kind of, people are going to use and they're going to take away, and they can get value from, then you're on the right tracks. But if you're using it just to kind of be the next big pranker or whatever, then I'm not sure I'm down with that. But each to their own, man. And we've all, like you said, we've all got our own vibe, and just because I don't like pranking people doesn't mean that there's a whole kind of community of people that don't. There's loads of people out there that enjoy doing that sort of stuff and watching that sort of stuff. So,
I think for producers and DJs, it's to try to use it more as a tool to connect with people and to share
That's it.
Things that you like and things that other people are doing. I'm trying to move it as a way to put a spotlight on how I do things, how other people are doing things that I like. And I think that's that's the type of stuff that people are going to be gravitating to more now, as in terms of, rather than just like a selfie or you putting up that you were featured on a Beatport chart, or, these kind of
it does tend to feel a little bit like Groundhog Day. I've got to be honest. Yeah, it's just the same thing over and over again, seeing people kind of, but I'm very cynical. I don't mean to be, maybe it's my age, I don't know, but I'm just really cynical with stuff. I just like to, real stuff, I like to be real. I like people that are straight talking, and, and I feel like society has kind of lost that because of social media. But, I've got 3 kids, and I haven't got the time to be sat there writing about my life and what I had for breakfast, and, and putting up snippets. I've tried. If you look on the socials, you'll see the SKiRRA socials, you'll see bits and pieces of me trying to do things like that. But when it comes down to it, I just rather make music, man. Spend some time with my kids and my wife, and then when the kids go to bed, just get in the studio and do what I've got to do. And that's kind of that's how I prefer to spend my time, and working with my friends, you know, like working with, like other producers to, to contribute to this.
What do you use for your DAW? You in Ableton?
Yeah. I was a Logic user for 22 years.
I've used Logic.
And then a friend of mine showed me Ableton and said, you should check this out. And I'm like, nah, I don't know, man. I'm not. I've been doing the same thing. He's like, you're institutionalized, man. You got to check this out.
I know. So I'm in that boat, man. Well, I'm in Reason, which people are like, why are you in Reason? Right. But I used to use it with Logic. I've used Pro Tools. But it's just my workflow, but I've been debating on switching to Ableton for sure. It's just, I know it'll be quick for me to pick up, but it's, it's just changing your whole workflow. It's like, I got to pause everything and kind of regroup, learn a new system.
So if it helps you at all, I was in exactly the same boat as you. He said, you need to check it out. You need to kind of bite the bullet, check it out. It was costing me a fortune in plugins on Logic, and he was like, there's a load of, it ships with a bunch of things that you're going to use every day. I'm like, okay, you know what, I'll give it a go. So I got a demo and downloaded it, and it took me all of around 30 minutes to work it out.
To feel
it's really.
I have used it, but I used it more back in the day when it was more just looping, and they didn't have as much of the full DAW features.
So there's two ways that you can look at the DAW, and so the looping obviously that's the way that Henry put stuff together. But
I've seen him do that.
He's more of a hands-on kind of hardware kind of guy. I mean, all my I sold a lot of my hardware. I don't really keep it. I'm more of a kind of
I do mine most of the box.
So I love Wavetable and I love Operator, and they're the two synths that ship with the DAW. And then you've got other really just. So the rack system in Ableton is just second to none. I mean, there's nothing else out there like to be able to create racks, and
the way they lay it all out too, very linear. And and also for collaboration, that's main reason why I'm considering is just everybody's on it. You know what I mean? It's like easy to send files back and forth. So maybe you would recommend just taking
I would 100% recommend. I would never go back to anything. I've actually, like, after that length of time using Logic, I've actually forgotten how it works. That, but
once you're on a certain level, you can pretty much jump to other ones, and like you said, you'll pick it up pretty quick. But it's your speed will suffer probably for a little bit.
I think for me, I'm in the camp of work smarter, not harder. That's always something I always say to my kids. Always try and work out a way to work smarter about stuff, and don't make it hard on yourself. And sometimes producing music can be a little bit like people tend to get quite. They're shocked at how quickly music comes back to them when they ask me for stuff. And I've always had not always, but since having my kind of system that I kind of use, I've always never really understood why it's that much of a shock, because the quality's still there. It doesn't impede on the quality, and they're kind of how the hell have you done that? And it's just like, just be smart about it. I've got system down. So I've got a template that I set up in Ableton, and it has groups, and within the groups I've got a low group, a synth group, a drum patterns group, and then a highs group, and then they've all got EQ compression on the groups. And then all I'm doing is just literally just dropping in anything with a drum rack. So drum rack especially is great for techno, because it means you can start working 16ths and stuff with lots of different sounds. I've got the TR8 up there, which kind of I can put that through, and then you've got the synths, which are really, they're just there. MIDI works really well, so it's just it's really easy to be able to create something from start to finish. I've got
how about arrangement
yeah,
templates?
so on the top of it's not necessarily because there's nothing in there as far as templates concerned. It's not like one of these ones you can buy off the internet or anything. It's just an empty canvas that I know where everything is, because I've put it there. And then with 64 bars, breaks, and I know where the breaks are. I know where I want to put my breaks. So you say you're talking about being DJ friendly. That's something that I've always had a big thing for.
Oh yeah, your track. They're always just in a set. They always just like work so well.
Yeah.
Like I
don't like I've got recently I've started to play around with my arrangements a bit more, drop things in and out a little bit in a bit more kind of unorthodox way. Not the next Hydraulix, but the next Hydraulix after that is a little bit like that. But it's essentially the first 64 bars and the last 64 bars. There's absolutely no way I would mess the arrangement with those, because I'm making these for DJs. I'm not making them to listen to at home. These are for people that need to use them professionally. So, you have to be professional about it. And it was when I was kind of at the height of mechanical, that was the main thing that we looked at when we were taking demos is it DJ friendly? And if it's not, and it goes back, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to work on it. If it was a good track, then obviously I'll work with them to get it to a point where it's good enough to sign. But a lot of people just want to be different and quirky, and it's not quirky, it's annoying. So
I know. I've learned that too. Yeah. Similar to what you do, I just have a blank track that's color coded that it just helps. I used to struggle with arrangements. I used to struggle so much. Like I'd have this sections of my tracks and it would just take me forever. I'd sit there and I don't know why, like I'd procrastinate a lot, but just having it blocked out to be like, okay, this is my main section. Just copy all the sections and then you can go through and
It's a procrastination killer for sure. Yeah. I mean, listen, we all suffer from that from time to time. And it's also important to kind of like know, for me, it's important to know where you want your sound to go, like be confident with what it is you're putting out, because
very good point.
Like if you're like, oh, I'll try a little melody one day or I'll try this another day, or if you're constantly trying things out, then you're always in that testing stage and you're never in that final kind of just nailing stuff down.
So you'll waste an hour noodling with a synth.
Yeah. But I mean, when you got remixes, when you get a remix request, everything's there for you.
I know.
Remix. Listen to the original, and you'll know kind of how you're going to put your mark on it.
Yeah. I know. I haven't done tons of remixes, but whenever I have, it's honestly kind of nice because you just these are the main elements I got. You can. The idea is there. Like you said, you just put your spin on it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So for an up and coming producer, what's the best piece of advice you could give to them who's early in their career development?
Yeah.
Producer and DJ, basically.
To set your own expectations for yourself and to not and be realistic about kind of what it is you want to achieve, because there are a lot, like I said earlier, there's a lot of people out there that when they first start producing music, let's say young kids, for instance, who have just got a machine and they've got Ableton and they want to kind of emulate things, and maybe they've got some decks and they want to produce or whatever. There's an expectation that when they release that out into the world, they're going to be a superstar DJ or a superstar producer. And it's great to have those sorts of ambitions, and it can happen, but it's more important to set yourself a pace and set yourself small goals, and don't like I was used to when I was doing Masinki, especially. I used to set label goals. So I'd say for this year I want to have this label, and this label, and then I would kind of aim to try and release on. So I think one year I had Reload, IAMT, and Black Cat, and I got a release on each one of those on that year, and that was kind of enough for me. That was my goal. I'd set that goal. And then it's funny because by then releasing on those labels, you then network with the people that run those labels. And now like Vitaly Katz is my bro. He's we're bezies, and it's like, that only happens from not setting your expectations so high that you become this egotistical maniac who just kind of is so bent on just being, the next Fat Boy Slim or whatever, and it's just. I like that, and that also it might happen, but it might not, and it's more important to kind of have a realistic goal that it's not pessimistic to say that, you just have to just feel the music for the music's sake. Don't don't be doing it for the coin.
And do you think that helps in terms of longevity and having an actual
100%, because this is a community.
Yeah.
And the community is why we're all still here, in year in, year out. Everyone's propping each other up. I got friends in, the US and in Canada, Europe, Japan, literally all around the world. And we're all there for each other.
Yeah.
And then you've got people like, Henry's a blessing for me. He's helped me out so much this year, especially. And Alan Palmer, AP, these people in the UK they're legends. They're known around the world for being, some of the best hard techno producers in the world.
Yeah, and AP runs refined format, which
AP, and he runs techno too. He's, in terms of his really sound. Quality. I mean, I've said it before to anyone who listen, and I'll say it again. AP for me is the best hard techno producer in the world.
Nice.
And he, for a number of reasons, but it's just solid. And his ego is zero, and that's because he understands the value of what we were talking about community spirit, and running this thing, and from an underground perspective rather than what can I get out of it.
Well, techno is really, I mean, there's a lot of electronic music genres that are global, but techno specifically just does seem like it.
Yeah, the older generation, because
borders.
Obviously it's been around for a long time. The older generation tends to gravitate to it more. I mean, obviously, drum and bass in the UK, I don't know if it's the same in the US, but drum and bass in the UK is more predominantly for the younger generation. So you will get a lot more kids in their 20s and stuff. Drum and bass festival.
Techno's similar. I mean, drum and bass is not as popular here as in the UK. I used to be big into drum and bass a lot. I lived in San Francisco, was a part of the scene. Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorites. But yeah, that and dubstep in terms of electronic music. Yeah. So how about in terms of, say, for DJ gigs, and what would be your advice to people on those? I mean, in terms of
getting gigs.
Yeah, getting gigs. Do you think more about building more of a local, regional community, or do you think it's through your productions and
start off small and just try and do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to put on parties and you want to listen to techno music and at loud volumes. Sweaty warehouses. To rent a warehouse in the UK isn't huge amounts of money. There's lots of people now who have got specifically they've got licenses and stuff already kind of set up. There's some amazing small clubs. There's a brilliant club in London called Fold, who are just been rated the best club in London for underground music, and they're really reasonable in rates, and it's just about building a community and getting people to come and have a party together. And if you start there, then you will find that the more people you talk to when you're there at those events, the more opportunities you get, and then the festivals obviously happen and stuff. But it's I mean, you get out what you put in. So I mean, like I said, I don't have, because I've got children and a wife and various other obligations. I don't tend to push for lots and lots of work, but I've been really lucky this year. But it's just some people, the more they work at it, the more kind of kickback they're going to get from it. So you're as of now, you're focusing on this residency that you have with Collide. Is that what you're saying before? I mean,
playing regionally as much as you can.
I mean, to be honest, I don't have any focus on playing live. I only really do DJ appearances for one reason, and that's to feel alive. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's I don't do it. I'm a bit of a nutter. Anyone that's seen me play will know I don't stand around, and that's because I genuinely love it, and it makes me feel like that's the reason that I'm put on this earth, is to feel alive. I got that quote from Tony Romanello. He does the same thing. When he gets beyond the decks, he feels alive. And when you get to a point in your life, there are things that make you happier than others, and it just makes me very, very happy. And so that's the reason why I do it. But in terms of kind of like chasing it down, there's a lot of work involved to actually get to a point where you're getting a lot of work. And I was signed to 3 agencies at one point, and it was great. I was getting some, but the majority of this time, people were coming to you. They just send you a message to say, we want you to play at an event or whatever.
Yeah.
But in terms of like actually getting noticed for those gigs, it used to be Beatport. Like Beatport used to be the kind of platform where you would, if you got your number one, you're going to get booking, right?
That's what
It doesn't work anymore because everybody knows that there's no value in it anymore. So you're now getting to a point where you've got to find other ways of kind of getting yourself, like getting out to promoters, because promoters want to book you for ticket sales.
Yeah.
But it's a swings and roundabouts, because if you haven't got the social networking following, which I don't, then you're going to struggle. I mean, probably shouldn't say this, but it's only him that knows that it was a conversation that I'd had between a friend of mine and myself, who had approached a promoter from the south of France to book me, and the promoter turned it down based on the fact that I didn't have over 25,000 followers. And that was his metric for booking DJs.
Yeah.
And he'll know who we're talking about, but it's one of those things that,
I mean, I have heard that
details about, but the bottom line is that regardless of who, of how these things happen, there are people out there that are booking people based on their social networking following. And so,
well, because they just want to guarantee they're going to get people that show up. But I mean,
there's no guarantee.
Sometimes that's empty metrics. You have people buying likes,
totally
and
empty
followers.
Metric. You never go. No, exactly.
I mean, some people, I think, I think they're starting to look a little deeper as if your overall engagement on there. If you just have 25,000 followers and then 2 likes on a post, it's probably fake. But I mean, there's a lot of people complaining about that. It's rather unfortunate. Yeah.
But there's no magic crystal ball is there to get DJ. I mean,
yeah,
so my job now is I'm a voiceover artist, and also
really?
Yeah, and
that's
also
great.
a DJ. So that's what I do for work.
Yeah.
And I do open platform at the weekends when I'm not doing techno stuff. And
do
so
what on the weekends? Say that again.
Open platform. So discos essentially.
Oh,
so it'd be like like Macarena
open format. Yeah, we call it open format.
Saturday night. 90s, 80s, that kind of stuff. And I get more money from that than I do techno.
Yeah.
And that's because it's a little bit wider. People kind of, you've got weddings and anniversaries, and
it's the same here. Stuff. Yeah. I can go DJ a bar and play 4 hours playing top 40 hip hop and get paid. And yeah.
So, it highlights that you really should really only be kind of doing underground stuff for the love. And, anything else that kind of comes out as a result of you doing that for the love is a bonus. If you look at it that way, then eventually things will happen. But
I mean, do you have a goal would you have a goal to make your music your main bread and butter, or have you gotten to the point where you're just I just want it to be a part of my life, and I'm just going to have, my other ways of making a living and then mix it in with that, and whatever happens.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point where I wanted to be a techno DJ full time, of course, like everybody. But it's just trying to build that up. I mean, I've been quite lucky. I built both of the kind of projects that I started in techno. I did quite well out of them, and I have had some amazing shows. I mean, I did Boomtown last year with Henry and Ayako Mori, and that was just incredible.
Yeah. Awesome.
And and those sorts of shows are great. They're really, really good fun, and but they don't come around all that often. So I would love to do it full time, but it's just one of those things where you have to work really, 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 really hard at, your social networking to get to that point, unless you are Henry Cullen, who's just in
A
demand
legend. Yeah.
every single weekend. I mean, he's doing something. So yeah, it's
How much when you're working on music, are you putting it? Do you try to work on something every day, or do you like how do you approach that?
I did, yeah, I did. I don't so much anymore. I mean, I'm producing probably 1 or 2 tracks a month. I really don't get a lot of time to come and sit down in the studio and write. But when I get the bug, I've been known to go through 3 or 4 tracks a day. And that's kind of that was at the height of it.
Yeah.
And I was up to not getting any sleep and just being mental and stuff. But I mean, just kind of the kids have got older, and because the kids are getting older a bit more, they need, they've all got clubs and stuff and football and this, that, and the other. And so I'm always taking them to kind of whatever it is they need to go to. So when we get home, then I've got to, get the tea on and all that kind of stuff. And by the time you've finished all of the kind of parental duties, you're not in a position to kind of sit down and think to yourself, "Oh, I'm going to go and write a track." But I prefer to work with people now. That floats my boat a bit more because I like that.
Pulls ideas on, and it's sharing the workload. And
I haven't actually written anything. I haven't actually got anything penned in with SKiRRA. I've got loads of collabs from the Masinki days, but actually haven't done anything. Me and AP are supposed to be getting something off the ground, but it's one of those things where, again, he's busy, I'm busy. So, eventually we will get it done, but I'd love to do a collab at some point. I know I mentioned it on email once. So we should definitely. I'll try to get you something. I'm always up for the idea, 100%. I just don't. It's kind of like the time it takes to actually get something finished off these days seems to be less and less. But I'm always down, man.
I know the struggle, man. I got 3 kids as well. It's definitely, and even me, I'm a little earlier. I got to I've been just pushing to get tracks as many done as I can and just send them out. And so I know the struggle, just being wiped out. I have found getting up really early in the morning is more conducive
that's your gym
for me.
Session.
What's that? It's just the only time at the end of the day, I'm just too wiped out. So I do live sound and event production for my job, which is demanding in its own right.
It is. So, it is. It's a lot of heavy lifting, isn't it?
Yeah. And long days and travel. Yeah.
Because you're the first in and you're the last out.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
What do you have coming up in the future releases, future projects that you want to plug? Anything releases?
So I've got 2 releases on Hydraulix. One of them is about to be released at the beginning of 23, and then there'll be another one later on, which Henry's just taken, so it won't be for a while. Then I've got I want to say 2 releases on Refined Format. I'm pretty sure he took 2 off of two EPs off of me, and then it's going to be some wicked remixes for those. I know that for a fact. And then there's a really cool label which I absolutely love. These guys, the label's called Audio Block, and they are they're actually club owners. They've just opened a club in Sheffield called Forge, and it's something that they've been trying. They've been plugging away at this for years, and I've done some live sessions up there in the old, when it was just an old steelworks, freezing cold. It was just great fun, but it wasn't really a club, and they've just pushed and pushed and pushed, and they've managed to get it open. And it's a 1,000 capacity venue, and they're absolutely killing it every weekend now.
Nice.
And so it's lovely to see them doing so well. But that's another one coming out on Audio Block.
So we'll wrap this up. I got one more question, and I think we'll call this out here. So if this could be anything, this doesn't have to be music related. If you could go back in time and give your previous self one piece of advice that you wish you had understood sooner, what would it be?
Learn finances.
Learn
Learn about
finances.
money. Yeah, and don't listen to teachers when they tell you that this is how it needs to be done, because they don't teach you about money at school.
Oh no, they don't.
Like for me, it took me. I only started learning it in my 40s, but they don't want you to know. People don't want, you know, the powers that be, should I say? I'm not gonna start getting into conspiracies, because I'm not that guy. But you know, it's not a secret. They don't want you to be rich, so
They
won't
want an
teach you.
employee. They want an employee,
Want an
not an
employee. They
owner.
want you to
Yeah.
run the country for. They want you to. They need bin men. They need lorry drivers. They need people that aren't in a position where they understand finances. Because if you understand finances, then you start making more money. And when you start making more money, they don't like that. They don't want that. So
Yeah.
you've got to. So you know, the children. I mean, we always say to the kids, you know, you have to go to school. You have to do your maths. You have to do your English. You have to do your base level education. But we will teach you. We will teach you how to handle your money.
Yeah. It's very good advice. It's the same over here. Same over here.
I wish my old dad, I wish he knew that when I was younger, and taught me how to deal with my money. But it is what it is, you know, and I've learned that. I learned that purely by chance. So
Yeah.
now I know it. I'm trying to pass that on to my children, and hopefully that will sink in, and they'll know how to kind of go out and hustle for proper money. Because
SKiRRA techno producer / financial financial services on the side. Just plugging that. Yeah.
Got to get that disclaimer in, haven't you?
Great. Well, thanks for being on my first episode here of this interview series. It's been great talking to you. I really appreciate it. Not really having, you know, I mean, I got the mix series, but this interview series of it, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to set it up, if it's going to be a part of Mr. Flick Radio. So I appreciate you coming on and talking to me.
Oh, mate. It's my pleasure. It's really good to meet you, man.
All right.